fall into heresy is a worse defeat than any the battlefield offers.
Hello and welcome to HeresyCast. My name is Gabe, and today I'm joined by my father, Ed.
Hello.
And our friend out in the web, Mr. Sean.
How's it going, guys?
Good.
Pretty good. And today we're going to continue. Well, it's partially a continuation of the previous episode. We're going to be doing questions for newbies, where we're just going to have. Apparently, there's some burning questions that Sean has after the last episode that he wanted to ask on this one, and he thinks that there's enough that we could do a full episode on. So I figured it'd be a good opportunity to see if he's thinking some of the same questions that people out there are.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Sean doesn't have a ton of experience in 40K, so I'm sure there's a lot of things that are. It's a gigantic, complex rule set. It really is, between codexes, between the rule book, between what you're doing, what you're setting up on the table. There's a ton of questions that can come up that, until you've actually had time on the table, just seem a little bit, overwhelming. So we're here for you, Sean. That's what we're trying to say.
Well, that's good, because I need somebody to be here for me for this one.
Well, that's what we're here for. So we've had a little bit of time. I just real quick, a little bit of updates. IG has released, and I happen to know, Sean, you may have gone a little crazy with IG. I'm sorry, Astra Militarum. I am always going to call them Imperial Guard, no matter what copyright friendly names they.
Oh wait, the new Guard Codex dropped?
Yeah,
I didn't see that.
yeah. The new
Well,
Guard
hold
Codex.
on. Now, just real
Sort
quick.
of.
It hasn't dropped natively yet.
Oh.
So if you bought the Cadia Stands box, it came with that and the battle card, whatever they call the cards.
Yeah.
It came in that, and then it came with the cards, the reference cards and stuff. So you're able to get it.
That's the set where you get the special full art version of the codex.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
catch for that is, because if I wanted to go out and buy the Imperial Guard Codex right now, I couldn't, because
Yeah.
those special edition box sets are out. So that's always that weird gray area with a release.
Where there's like a grace period where there's no more that you can get, so only a limited amount of people can even play the army.
Right. So then, is the army actually genuinely
Released
for tournaments or not? Because, well, if not everybody has access to it, is it fair to let which
Some
codex is still
people.
accurate? Yeah.
So in the emails and stuff, because I'm a subscriber to Warhammer Plus and other stuff too, and in the emails I get from them, it specifically states in there that you're not supposed to use 9th edition Astra Militarum Codex yet for tournaments, just because not everybody across the board will have that data. So that there is a lag in people like me who bought the box, and then the people that already have everything that they need. You're still playing 8th edition basically at that point. So,
Sure. But if you're just doing kitchen table 40K, you can absolutely use that codex. There's nothing
yeah,
wrong with that.
and they do say, if people agree, you can use 9th edition. It's not fair for everybody, because not everybody has direct access to the codex, until it officially releases. So
Yeah, and we'll probably get that in another couple of weeks for the full release. So it's not like there's a gigantic lag time. I think
it's just a little.
they started this whenever they did the 8th edition version of the Sororitas. I could be wrong. There may have been other sets like that. It's the one that jumps out to me that I remember the most, when they did the special edition codex. It was the full art, and then nobody could play it for a little bit. They've done it for other since, like whenever Orcs came out, they did it for that. They've done it for every single release. Leagues of Votan, they did the exact same thing, where you had this
Right.
special edition box set to kind of get everyone, like, get the juices
Hyped for it.
yeah, so to speak, for the army, and then it goes away, and then the real version comes out a couple of weeks later. So
Yeah.
yeah, the cool thing. So if you like, for me, I'm going to be new to Astra Militarum. I'm new to the game, of course, but I have a lot of Space Marines built and stuff like the Ultramarines built. But the cool thing about this box for someone like me is you're getting the codex, of course, the assembly guide. You get all the transfers with it, and then the data cards, and then it comes with 20 Cadian shock troops, a Cadian command squad, a Sentinel, and then a two-person ordnance team, which I'm not sure if it comes with two team because it says 2 times ordnance teams, but I'm guessing that just means two because ordnance you can only have two in a team anyway. So
Yeah. So my guess would be that is going to be actually 4 models.
it's
Interesting.
two model. It's actually 2 models.
Also,
It's,
Yeah, because each model has like the one model base has two guys on it.
and maybe they corrected that
Yeah.
because I know that there was an issue at a GT not that long ago, where they had an issue with the second model that came with a gunner. I think it's the one that was actually for the Eldar. Correct me if I'm wrong. It may have been IG, but someone had the guy, like the spotter, was actually a separate model. So you had a guy holding a gun, and then you had a spotter with him, and the guy had positioned the spotter in a position where the gun could not be charged legally because you need to be within an inch and a half of the unit that you're charging. And oh yeah, those are the new ones, and they do have them on the base. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so Gabe
Yeah.
literally his Google
Here,
flew was
wait.
quick.
Hold up, wait. I'll copy
Yeah.
this. Wait, do I have the permissions to do this?
Yeah, you're on my account.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a channel in the HeresyCast Lounge. Sean, if you, whenever you're listening to this, there's a new channel. I'm gonna timestamp it in here with the attached image.
Just put it in podcast crap. Don't make a new channel. Just put it in podcast crap.
Well, but I want to keep it set because if it's separated, then we can just have a list.
Okay,
Trust me.
it's not my channel.
Cut this out.
That's all I'm saying.
Well,
Yeah, Chris,
we'll think
cut
of-
this out and scold us for making a new channel on your Discord.
I doubt he'll care. If he cares, he can bill me.
Yeah. So like the ordnance teams, they come, on a large, like one of the big bases.
Yeah, they look like they're 60 mils or better.
Yeah, and then you have so there's like 3 guys per base, and then some extra stuff that they put down, the ammunition boxes, and then the actual ordnance piece on the base. And like I said, I haven't gone through everything yet just because of time, but it really looks like, with the ordnance teams, they're pretty self-explanatory. And of course, 2 times ordnance teams would mean that there's 2 total teams in the box. So
Yeah,
basically 2 bases worth of stuff, in the box for it. So that's kind of it's cool for a starter, to me. I know a lot of people were saying, for $200, are you getting your money's worth? Well, yeah, I'm sure, the
yeah. Games
models.
Workshop does a good job with those as far as the financial stuff. There's usually at least a 25 to 30% discount on the models, and you've got to consider the fact that you're also getting the codex, and the codex that
Right.
you're getting a special edition codex. Those are limited printed, and if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. They're also numbered, so like they are like there is a not that I'm trying to push a financial side to it for like rare stuff in 40K, but there is a bit of a bump in the fact that you are getting a different edition of the codex that other players aren't getting.
Yeah, and that I don't know enough about to know, but I don't see like a special number on it or anything. But it could be somewhere in the book that I have no idea. Like it does have the code. So, it has
Oh, that's
use the
just for the Warhammer app, so you can access
yeah,
access it on theirs.
yep.
You know,
And
I've never done that. I need to do that. I have the app on my phone. I'm not gonna lie, like legitimately, I always end up just pulling up Battlescribe and always end up just making my armies that way. So I know it is something that you can do is put the code in your Warhammer app and you will have access to the upside to the app, of course, is that they keep it updated. So if there's an FAQ or something that changes with the rules or a ruling, they will put all of that into the app whenever they do it. So that's actually pretty useful.
yeah, and the book is different. So like the 9th edition books are blue. This is not blue. It's more of I'm gonna say I can't totally tell, but it's like a brownish, greenish, something like that.
Yeah, that's how they did their full art ones. So, like for example, I don't.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can look this up. I'll have to see if I can find it. But like, I know that in the regular books, there's like the big gigantic Warhammer 40K logo on it, and then you have the name, and then for those special edition ones, it's almost just the art.
Yeah, so the covers is just the art. The spine has, Codex, has Warhammer 40K Codex Astra Militarum in white, and then their flag symbol down at the bottom for Games Workshop or Warhammer from Games Workshop. And the front has, dude on his horse, so that's got to be the big leader guy.
Yeah.
And then a tank on the back, and it's one of the things. So, one of the attractive things for me with this army is it very much feels like I'm playing a World War II style army. I
Yes,
know
it
I'm
does.
not, but it's, it really feels like I think I think playing wise on the table, it almost feels like you get more bang for your buck.
Well, and legitimately, I think you're going to find as you play them a little bit, you're going to find that like Astra Militarum, Imperial Guard are humans.
Hmm.
They're not the super soldiers. They're not genetically modified. They're not demons. They're not aliens. They are humans, and they are in the billions and billions across the Imperium. So. It, there's a lot to be said there. You are correct in the fact that I feel like there's a lot of it that has a lot of World War One stuff, World War Two, depending on which branch or which version of the Astra Militarum you go. Like, so for example, like the Death Corps Krieg folks, they have a very World War One look to them with the gas
Correct.
mask. Like
Yep.
even and I don't know if they still have them. I have to take a look. Forge World used to do Rough Riders for the Death Corps Krieg, and even the horses had gas masks on them, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, and it's I'm trying to find the page that I was looking at earlier. Only thing I don't like about it is it doesn't have the like string markers and stuff for
Oh
the
yeah.
Militarum book. But yeah, I mean it has, everything I think that you would want in a human type army, including, horses, which is interesting, having your cavalier type armies. They're pretty cool. They're very interesting color wise too, because they're not just all, the army drab green type guys. They have
They
the
can
Rough
be if you
Riders.
want. If you want to go with Cadians, they can be that. Or you could get what's the other one? The Catachans. You can get like the Rambo looking ones if you want to go down that route.
Yep.
You can get the Vostrians, which are more like the what's the right word? Russians isn't the right word. It's the Tsar. Was it the Russian forces that were? Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like they look like a mix between Russians and Prussians.
Yes. Yes. So like depending on what home world that particular Imperial Guard is from, Cadians are the most common. They're going to be the quote unquote ultramarines of this particular faction, where that's the most common. Those are the ones you're going to see the most, but there are other different varieties and variations. The catch for me that's always been kind of a shame to be an IG player, like if I want to have Blood Angels, I get a regular tactical marine, I paint it red, it's a Blood Angel. If I want to
Hmm.
do Dark Angels, I paint them green, they're now Dark Angels. Imperial Fists, they're yellow. But if I want to do those differences between like the Catachan Jungle Fighters or the standard Cadians, like they're literally different models. Like I can't just take a standard Cadian guardsman and
Hmm.
paint him to have muscles. Like it's just not modeled that way.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And
So
well, the cool thing too is, I like the concept of the shock troop guys. My first introduction to them was in Kill Team, and it's whatever Octavius or Octave, whatever it was called. Um, and I don't. Let me put my glasses on and I can read it. It's Octarius is what it was called. So they gave you 10 Astra Militarum troops, that you could build out in certain ways, and it gave you like the medic one and the comms one and all that. And I just fell in love with those guys just playing Kill Team with them.
Oh yeah.
And they're just the basically the shock troops.
who
Then
the Death Corps?
and then you have what the Tempestus regiments and stuff, which gives you more like a World War One steampunk type feel. You know, so these guys kind of run the gamut.
They
Thing.
do. They do. So a lot of variety, and I think you'll find a ton of fun out of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, not to forcefully re-rail this conversation.
Oh no, we do this all the time.
I know. I
Hmm.
was gonna give it like 15 minutes before I
Yeah, no,
get us back on track.
we go down a lot of rabbit trails. Anyway, so this is more a show specifically for the new players and Sean. So Sean, I know we had a little bit of setup. We only didn't give you a ton of warning, but you did mention that you had some questions that you wanted to ask. So ask
Yep.
away. Questions for newbies number 1. What do you got, Sean?
Okay, building armies, and it's kind of confusing because I have the core rule book in front of me, and I've been reading it today, and it's a lot of words, that.
Let me go get mine so I can pull page references out. Give me 2 seconds, and Gabe, continue, please.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
So, okay, so basically it starts, talks about command points, but then every time I've heard about command points was always what you spend during your battles to be able to do, specific things in the battle that might help your troops or hinder the other
Yeah.
team. But then it starts talking about battle forged armies and command points, and then it's talking about, command patrol, incursion, strike force, onslaught. Then it talks about power levels or point limits, which I understand those things. And then it says 18 command points. So my guess is that to buy stuff with? Is that like what you're using?
So there's a lot to unpack there. So
Well,
why don't we start from the beginning?
So with how command points work, the amount of command points that you have. So the game itself kind of, I like to think of it as the game itself kind of starts before you even put models on the board. It
Mhm.
starts with how you're deciding to build that army. And so
Right.
with the command points, you get more command points the more points that are being played. So the higher the level, the more amount. But there is a set number that each player has to begin with. And then there are certain things like, oh, I'm going to buy another relic that costs me a command point. It's as if you were spending that command point in the game, but you're just doing it in a pre-game move. So that whenever you start the actual game, you have less to begin with. So it's like, okay, if you start with 6, I want to have a warlord retreat, an extra relic, and one other thing on something else. Like I give some guy an ability that he gets for his thing. That means that I'll start with 3, but I'll have the benefit of those extra things, and you have to decide what's worth it and what's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. And
So let's start with the beginning here, Sean. So if you actually go to your core rulebook, and I'm going to reference page 244 for those
that's
at
that's
home.
right where I'm at. I'm ready to
So
go.
before you start a game, you want to decide what size game you want to play, and that's quite literally it's either points or power level and how big you want to play. The starting recommendation when to learning how to play the game is that 50-point level or up to 500 points. I personally don't believe that. I really do feel that the game starts at 1,000 points or 100 power level, simply because there's enough points to go around. And what that will do, if you're just playing directly out of the core rulebook, now keep in mind there are those yearly update books that they put out every year. They're not required reading. If you're just playing just for fun and you're not intending to ever play in a tournament, don't worry about them. But if you are interested in kind of keeping up with the Joneses and what the rules are, if you play directly out of the book, how it works is whenever you pick whatever that battle size is, that tells you how many command points you start off with at the beginning of the game. So let's say, for example, you decided that you were going to play 1,000-point game. I always play with points. I've not really done a lot in command points or power level. Yeah. So like I've always done points. So let's say that you're starting at an incursion level. So the incursion level is going to tell you that you can go anywhere between 501 and 1,000 points. You should probably get as close to 1,000 as possible. And at the very, very beginning of the game, you're going to start with 6 command points. The very next thing that it's going to ask you to do is to pick a detachment. Now, the detachment determines what troops are what units are required to be on the board and how many slots you have open for those.
And then on top of that, it also depends on. So it determines which unit or like which types of units you are required to have, but it also alters which other kinds of units you can have. Like certain detachments won't allow, like for example, like fast tack. If I'm running a certain detachment, it won't allow here he has yeah, it's the next couple pages. Certain ones have higher restrictions than other ones. So if you really like running heavy support or like heavy support tanks and running Lehman Russ tanks, you're probably not going to want to run a detachment that's going to limit the amount of tanks that you can use. So you have to
you might
really
want to go with like a spearhead detachment. For
exactly.
example. So what
And
you'll
that's
find is
yeah.
so
So
whenever you're
real quick before we jump too far into this. So when you look at page 244, that tells you the level of game you're playing, right? So
correct.
let's just say we're playing incursion because that's the 501 to 1000,
Yeah, good
and then
starting point.
it has six command points. So then we go to the next page, or not next page, but 246, and then it talks about detachments, and then you look at where it says incursions. It says number of detachments. That means that the most I could have is 2.
Correct.
Is that okay? So that is correct. But I could
Yeah.
have
So
one.
legitimately, if
I
you
could have one if I want to, though,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
yeah, no, that's just the max number. So legitimately, if you have the points, you could squeeze it in. You could run, say, 2 patrols.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something I like doing.
And the main reason why people do that is ultimately, and it's usually those elite slots and the HQ slots. Because
Well,
if you take note, each one of these detachments, you can only have up to 1 to 2 usually HQ slots. And your HQs are usually your high powered characters for the most part live in those HQ slots. So for example, if you're taking a patrol, you can only have 2 HQ units. And you'll know that whenever you're looking through your codex, it'll tell you, the symbols in on these pages 246 and 248 and 249 match your codex. So when you're looking at a data sheet for a unit, you'll know precisely what slot it fills into based on that icon. So if you're looking
Right.
at, I don't know, let's take one off the top. If we're talking, not Mortarian's probably a bad idea, but if you were looking at,
what one of my HQs?
yeah, Typhus,
Typhus, Lord of Contagion. That's the one I run all the
yeah.
time.
So Lord of Contagion is an HQ slot. Once you take Typhus in your Death Guard army, that fills one of those HQ slots. So if you're running a patrol, you can only ever get one more additional HQ and then you're done. You can't have any more.
If you wanted more, you'd have to run a second patrol or a second other detachment that would let you fit in more HQ slots.
Correct.
But then that reduces the amount of command points you have at the start of the
Exactly.
game.
Correct, but there is a special rule, and I don't know if you take notice on this. If you look at every single one of these, um, it costs two. You're right. It costs 2 command points to take a patrol, but on the left-hand side over there, it says command benefits plus 2 command points if your warlord is part of this detachment.
So you can get it right back
Yeah,
immediately.
so your warlord is basically the leader of your army, and you need to declare at the beginning of every game who your warlord is. Some special characters require them to be the warlord. So, for example,
Primarchs.
yeah, Primarchs tend to do that.
So Reboot, whatever his name is,
Yeah,
Reboot
Reboot Gilliman.
Guilliman.
Yeah.
Mortarion, Angron's probably gonna do it.
Well,
So
the
real
Silent
quick,
King does it.
so let's just say, and I'm going back to Space
Magnus.
Marines because I know a little bit more about them right now.
Right.
So if I wanted to use a Primaris captain, I could make him the HQ then.
Yeah, he can be an HQ, and if you don't take another character that has a special rule that says they have to be the warlord,
He could be the
you could also name him the
The
warlord of your.
warlord.
And if he's a warlord, your patrol detachment basically comes out to a net 0.
so you
Because
still have 6
yeah, it cost you 2 command points to build that detachment, but since you have your warlord in it, you get 2 command points back. What they're trying to do is they're trying to discourage people from taking multiple detachments, um, and paying a tax for it with command points. And as we'll get to, I'm sure a little bit later,
Sorry,
command points are an
say that
important
again.
reason.
They're trying to force you to take multiple or not to do
They're
multiple.
trying to make you take one. They'd prefer you take just one detachment. There are certain factions in the game that are better off, but it is a cost. There is a tax to
Yeah, okay.
taking multiple detachment, and that tax is your command points.
So as an example, and just bear with me on this. So let's just say that I wanted to build 1,000-point army. I wanted to have 3 tanks. Okay, not 2, but 3
Right.
tanks.
Yep.
Let's just say 3 Lehman Russ tanks. Now, for that, I would have to go to a battalion detachment, but, and this is the next leads into the next question. So the colored one, so it says HQ 23, and then it's red, orange, and blue. that means that I have to have what, at least one HQ, or do I have to have two HQs in that army to make it legal?
So
Because
the
I don't the color ones I don't understand totally.
yeah, so if you're looking at the if you're looking at the ones that are colored, how the bottom number is already a number, so the minimum you can have in that is 2, and for troops the minimum you can have is 3, whereas the other ones the minimum is 0. So those red ones are required for you to take for you to be
Required.
able to
Okay,
take that
that
detachment.
makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that looking across that there were zeros on there. Okay. So
Yeah.
you have to have at least X amount in each one of these to make it legal.
Yeah, and as you go up, the requirements like get more difficult to fulfill. Like in the patrol, you just have to have one HQ and one troop choice, and that's all. And then everything
Okay.
else is basically free form. But at the same time, it also very much limits the maximum of the other things you can take. Whereas if you look at the battalion again, yeah, you're required to take more, but like there are now 6 elite choices. There's now 3 fast attack. Like the amount that you can have is increased by a lot, but you're
Yeah.
required to take more. So
Battalions
And
are
it,
battalions are really, really good for when you hit that 2,000 point limit. Like
yeah.
a vast majority of the lists that I see start off in that battalion. But you are correct in the fact that there is also an additional tax that I'm required to do 2 HQ and I'm required to do 3 troops on a battalion. Now, most people use their troops as their objective parkers.
Yeah.
Like they're the guys that are going to kind of sit on an objective because they're just going to stand there and hold it. That's what they're trying to do.
That's all they care
Yeah.
about.
So that's something you were probably going to do anyway. But there are other options. Like, for example, if you wanted to go with the spearhead detachment, there's no troop requirement. There's 1 HQ and there's 3 heavy supports. Or a vanguard, there's 1 HQ and 2 elites. You're not required to take troops. It's advisable because having those cheap I don't want to say disposable units because they are kind of key to winning a game if you want to have them on an objective.
How about
utility
no,
units.
hold on. You're talking, let's just say Astra Militarum, they're disposable units.
Okay, yeah, probably good. I mean, and don't
I'm
get me wrong,
trying to think of the correct word that I'm thinking of.
because there's plenty of people that spend the bare minimum tax on their troops so they can get all the other cool stuff. They want to get all the heavy supports. They want to get all the elites because that's what's going to win them a game. And I argue that that's not the case because I spend a lot of points on my sister squads, for example, to make sure that I have 10 woman squads sitting on an objective and holding that objective. Like that's important to winning the game. Like ultimately you have to kind of when you're building your list, trying to determine like who's doing what role. And I have 3 5-woman squads that are going out and getting objectives all the way towards the other end, and then 2 10-woman squads in the back holding the objectives and just holding the line.
Okay. And that makes total sense to me because, like with my shock troops, I can have up to 20 in a unit. And
I haven't read your codex yet, but wait till you get the conscripts. I think you can get like 50 guy squads of conscripts for like
yeah, it almost
13 points.
it almost reminds me of the skinks or whatever they were called in Warhammer
Yes.
Fantasy.
Oh, they die
where-
like dogs and they die in droves, but like
Yeah.
there's so many. It's ultimately the thing is like I have more guys than you have bullets, kind of. thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the, if you want to hold an objective, just throw 50 guys on an objective over 6 rounds and hope the rest of what you have can contain everything else. That's
Right.
kind of
Well, and keep in mind there is some strategy to the I'm going to throw a bucket of dice at you. I'm going to roll enough 5s and 6s or whatever it is to hit you and do damage. I
Right.
literally watched Gabriel in a previous edition, but I literally watched Gabriel kill a Land Raider tank with
A single orc slugger.
a single, just because of the RNG of dice. Sometimes
I got a hit. I got a wound. He did not get a save.
and it
And he
didn't.
re-rolled it and it didn't do it. All it had was 1 damage.
Yep. So it can happen. Dice are funny things.
so then.
I
Okay,
didn't win that game, but I still felt like I won the moral victory
no.
at the end.
Because who cares who won the
I
game?
don't- it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You had that moral victory on the table.
So so the other question I have in building is the power point. So in
Right.
the codex it talks about power. Now that's where you're going with, instead of buying with
Points.
command points per se, or with command points. You're buying.
No, not with command points. Like with it's that point level. It's that number in the middle. If you go back to page 244, it's that point limit. So you're right. There's a lot of points that get bounced around. Command points are specifically used for stratagems, those cards that you got
Yeah.
in your extra meta card, those little extra bonuses you can do during a turn. But
Yeah.
you're right. There are two methods to building an army. You can either do it with power level, which each data slate's going to have a power level for a specific unit and tell you how many are in it, or they're going to give you a point limit per model.
Yeah.
So it's
So the key difference in the two in points and power level is that with points you can have the intricate nuance of like weapon variety and different like war gear choices, whereas if you go with power level, it's it's more, it's like you can,
it's whatever the model has.
well, it's either whatever the model has, but you can also equip, because if you're running off power level, you can equip whatever weapon you want, and the power level
Sure.
remains the
And
same.
there
So
are,
it can feel a little unbalanced at times with power level, because you can have something that like probably is a little too good, but it's because it didn't have to pay for a weapon that it normally would have.
right.
Right.
Think of it this way. Usually the casual like fun game, it's probably advisable to go with power level because it gets you out of the 5 points for this gun and then 10 points for this upgrade, and then I'm going to go ahead and spend another 15 points on this, to doing that little nickel and diming stuff for a unit where it's just this unit of Marines cost me 4 points and this tank over here cost
Five
me
power
5 points.
level.
Right. And then whatever they're armed with kind of thing. Now,
It's a more, not, I wouldn't say simplistic, but it's a more,
less complicated.
it's a less complicated way to play the game. Whereas you can just have bigger numbers that it's like, okay, we're gonna play at 50 power level. What can I build with 50 power level? And then you can literally just look in your codex and go, that's 6, that's 7, these guys are 3. But if I upgrade them to have 10 more guys in it, it bumps them up to a 6, and then like blah blah blah. But then for the most part, relics and stuff don't add. Some relics add power level,
Some do, yeah.
but like those are the really powerful ones that are like actually game changing.
Yeah. So if you want to go with like I said,
Power level is probably the best place to
less
start.
complicated way to start the game, that's probably the way. Because that way there you don't have to worry about, this
What am
guy-
I equipping?
this guy's got a missile launcher and I forgot to pay the points for it. That guy's got a power sword and this one's got a pit bolt pistol. Like, you
Yeah.
can pay the point. You can
It's just
forget-
everybody just has
yeah,
what they
you could
have.
forget all of it, and whatever your guys have, they have. As just
Right.
so long as you're in agreement with your other player that they're not going to abuse the power level system, because it is very abusable. I have seen lists online of people that have matching 100 power level lists, where one list, if you were to move it over to points, is like 850 points,
And the
one-
other ones, like in the
yeah,
2,500s.
yeah, 2,500 points because of
Just-
all of the upgrades that they were able to get for free doing
Because you're doing it on power level.
Okay, so hopefully that answered your question as far as points,
Basics of building. Yeah. It's
basics of building. You did hit one other question I want to hit on to, and that's that battle forged army thing.
Yep.
So the basic definition of a battle forged army is technically, by the rules, if you have a box of models and you say you've got 10 orcs and 10 marines and 14 tyrannids and a chaos dreadnought, there's nothing in the rules stopping you from fielding that as an army. However, armies gain bonuses for being all from the same faction. So if you do that and you do the whole mixed bag of models, you're not going to get the bonuses for being battle forged. And basically what this is trying to do, in editions past, they allowed an ally system that allowed you to take a unit from this, a unit from there, and a unit from there, and kind of all put them into a big swath of an army. And they're pushing players away from that. So the easiest thing to worry about Battleforge, as long as every model in your army is from the Imperial Guard and you're using the Imperial Guard Codex, you're Battleforged. You're fine. Now there is an additional rule to that, which is whichever sub-faction you pick. So if every model in your detachment, say you're taking a patrol, and you decide that and I'm going to pick, I don't know your codex, so I'm going to pick the Sisters of Battle to talk about for a little bit. If I take Bloody Rose as a detachment, and every model in there has to be from Bloody Rose. So whatever bonuses or detriments that Bloody Rose gets, that applies to all of them. If I were to take 2 detachments, say 2 patrols in my army, and one of them's Bloody Rose and one of them's Arm-Armored Lady, I lose bonuses to both of those because they want the whole army to be from the same faction and from the same sub-faction to get all of the bonuses. So just take this rule of thumb. I'm going to pick my codex. I'm playing Imperial Guard. And I don't know what the sub-factions are in that codex, and they're all going to be from the same sub-faction, you're fine.
So, like Space Marines, when I look with Space Marines, I could take Imperium as long as everything has the keyword Imperium.
Correct.
Then
That's
I
probably a
would be
better example.
Battleforge. Yeah.
Yes,
So
that's probably a better example. So you technically could, if you wanted to, take an army that comprised of some of your Ultramarines and some of your IG. So
yeah.
they would
We
fall.
also have like cool things like special command units.
Mhm.
You could technically speaking mix in sisters and marines and
Yeah,
guards
because
if
they
you
all,
want.
all have the same appearance. The downside is whatever bonuses those special sub-factions get, they would lose because you have detachments from different sub-factions in there.
Right.
So
So explain what you just said. You'd
So
have
here, I have a really good example. of it.
basically, so let's say I had a detachment of Space Marines that were all Space Marines. I had
all Ultramarines, let's say.
all Ultramarines. Yep. A detachment of Astra Militarum, all Astra Militarum, and then I had a third detachment of Sisters of Battle. So because I'm using 3 different factions, we'll call it, or whatever,
Mhm.
um, I would lose a lot of the special abilities that the factions would have, correct?
Correct. So,
Right.
for example, one of the things for being a battle forged army that the sisters get, and I think this is pretty universal against all the sub factions, this is where your troops gain objective secured. You would lose that. There are other bonuses, like, for example, my miracle dice is a mechanic that's built inside of the Sisters of Battle. They would lose the ability to use that um, special ability because they are not a fully battle forged army. So it's like one of those things like, yeah, technically you can do it, but you're really playing at a detriment by doing. They wanted to leave rules open so that everybody can play with all their toys, but they also didn't want people to
Make
Fl-
crazy overpowered combos by mixing a
Mixing
little bit of this
factions.
and a little bit of that and a little bit of this here.
Yeah, okay. But basically, when people, and I'm not ever going to be a tournament player, but when people play in tournaments or, or for more competitive play, you're going to see basically all Ultramarines or all
Correct.
Sisters or, okay.
Correct.
You,
Well,
you
and
really
it's
don't,
yeah,
you
it's gonna be
don't
all
see the
Space Marines,
mixture.
and all of those Space Marines are Ultramarines, and it's gonna be all Sisters of Battle, and all of those Sisters of Battle
The
are gonna be Bloody Rose.
the only time that you'll probably see decent mixture will be either it'll be chaos factions and demons. Those two have like a hand in hand entanglement where it's
Okay.
like you can use a good bit of the stuff out of the demon codex in regular play of chaos space marines.
Yeah, but demons have specific rules saying that they're allowed to do that. They're
Yeah,
one of the few
because
factions that can.
yeah, they're the one of the only. Yeah, those two are some of the only that can. So it's like those are the only two that you'll ever really see making alliances because the rules allow them to do so and remain battle forged because they're chaos.
Gotcha. So the next question I have, so special characters. So
Yes.
the HQ special characters. Um,
There
so
are some social characters that fall into an elite slot too, but
yeah,
continue on.
I understand. I'm talking about the HQ
Mhm.
to start with. So, and let me find a good one here. Ursula Creed. Okay.
There you go.
So,
There's a good one.
yep. So she is a HQ figure. She comes as one figure, period.
Correct. One model.
One model. Now, does she stand around on the battlefield as one model, or do I
Yep.
put her in with a Cadian shock group?
So that's a great question. So in editions past, you used to have special characters that would join units. and they could basically use that unit as a bullet monkey. And what they found was there are some weird interactions with the rules that they wanted to prevent. A lot of the my ability overlaps with your ability, and then you all of a sudden have this unkillable unit. So
Right.
she would basically stand by herself. However, there is a special rule for all special characters that says as long as they are within 3 inches of any other unit, they cannot be the target of an attack.
Well, ranged attack.
Ranged attack. Now, there are exceptions to that rules, like sniper rifles, for example.
I can specifically pick out those
But
targets.
for example, you've got 50 Cadian shock troopers in front of you, and you've got Ursula in the back, and I've got my Sisters of Battle retributors. My retributors cannot pick her out to shoot her because it's called the lookout sir rule. Those 50 Cadian shock troopers are there to protect her, so I can't pick her out.
However, if you are in a bad position and
she's the closest
she is the closest model, then she is absolutely targetable. So you have to be careful with positioning, because if you get into a bad spot and she becomes the closest, now it doesn't matter and she can be shot at
Yeah,
any.
as long as she's not the closest models and she's within 3. Now there are other characters that have like the bodyguard rule that can still
Right.
kind of guard them. So yeah, you're gonna be kind of careful. Now, ultimately, in the end, how you're gonna put them on the table, I've absolutely mixed and matched HQ units inside of units. They're not part of that unit, so
They're just being covered by
they're
it.
just being covered by it. And sometimes because when you're trying to put models on the table, you're trying to squeeze everything into a very small
easier to
area.
look at.
It's kind of easier to look at. But effectively, as far as the rules are concerned, they are one individual model and they are treated as an independent model, and the rules follow through. For example, if someone's trying to charge that unit, they didn't charge your HQ, they charged that unit. So they have to declare both units that they're declaring.
Or my personal favorite, if you have an HQ surrounded by troop choice and someone goes to try and charge your HQ, they can't, because there's an inch of models around me, so you
Correct.
can't get into close combat. You have to go through the units first.
Correct. So there is a tactic to the game, which everyone affectionately calls bubble wrapping, which is to basically take a special character that you want to keep alive,
And sit them in the middle.
sit them in the middle,
Exactly.
and have about a 1 inch or 1.5 inch bubble around them and surround them by other models, which basically protects them. Now, keeping in
So-
mind, most of your special characters have an ability that says all units within 3 inches of the model get this, or all units within 6 inches. So you want to have, like, they build the rules so that you really want to stay close to your HQ units.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that said, so I now have a lot of range stuff that can attack, with blast.
Right.
Correct. Indirect fire.
So the indirect fire side of things. So let's say I shoot my basilisk and I'm using the Earthshaker cannon, which is a heavy D6 plus 3, strength of 10, armor piercing 3, damage 2.
Great
And it has
gun.
blast. This weapon can target units that are not visible to the bearer. Okay, so I shoot it, and it's within 240 inches, which is basically across the game store on a different table. So with that said, then if I'm targeting the unit that one of these special characters are in, how does that affect the special character with the blast?
So
It doesn't affect her
in days past,
at all. When you
in-
actually had a template.
in days past, we used to have these clear plastic circles that were literally the blast radius of explosives. So in that day and age, we would have put that circle over the point of impact and said, is she inside of it? And if she was, then yeah, she would have hit by it. But now the rule goes that your attack hit the unit, so the unit is the one receiving the damage, and she doesn't really it doesn't affect her,
Yeah, because-
unless there's a special rule that says it does.
Like
'Cause,
splash damage or something.
yeah, there are some guns that will be like, oh, my Tesla cannon can like zap some electricity to some other people within X amount of inches. So it's like it depends on if it says it can do
But
that.
you said the key word right there in targeting. I'm
Yeah.
targeting this unit. Well, in order to target that unit, you have to follow a certain sets of rules. They need to be visible. You need to be able to draw direct line of sight, unimpeded direct line of sight, and the lookout sir rule isn't in play. So even though you can potentially see it, even though you can definitely reach it with the range, you still can't pick a special character out to drop that Earthshaker cannon on, because their other troops around them are going to be the ones they have to kill first.
Yeah, exactly.
So even when it says you don't need to be within line of sight,
So
you,
that rule, so the rule saying it doesn't need to be in line of sight is overwritten by the rule on the HQ saying that they have to, or if they're within 3 inches of a troop, or I guess any other unit, that one has to be targeted.
Right. So I have to dig it up. Give me a second to see.
Well, because it's not a line of sight thing. It's a even if you had line of
Line of
sight.
sight means basically, Sean. So if you have a ruin, and ruins are a fairly common terrain piece in 40K. I've
right,
got a ruin between you and me, and that ruin's got windows in it. So even though I can get my head down the model's eye and look through a window and see your model through the ruin, that ruin is considered to be obscuring terrain, which means even though I can physically see you, I can't draw a line of sight to you without a piece of terrain touching that line of sight to be able to shoot you. So because if you're standing behind a building, that even though I can quote unquote see through it, I can't draw a line of sight without touching terrain, I can't target you.
Exactly.
okay,
So what your Earthshaker cannon says, the Earthshaker cannon's on one side of a ruined building and a tank's on the other side. You can still shoot the tank because
okay,
yours is going up and over. That's all that line of sight rule is saying, is that you don't have to be able to draw direct line of sight between the two models to be able to target.
Which means what you do with it is you park it in the back left field or the back field.
Yes.
Yeah, you just park it in the back field behind a building where no one will ever see it, and you just fire shells every round. That thing's gonna fire 5 times and kill 5 things.
right. Yeah, and I knew that we would once we started talking about this portion of it, because to me, so this game, what's interesting to me about this game is I'm trying to learn it in 3 phases. So the first is how to build. That's number one.
Yeah, and hopefully we helped you with that.
Oh, absolutely. I think I got that down now. And then the second part of the game I need to learn is so that command point side. And I'm not talking about the building side, I'm talking about the usage side.
Right.
And then how to build like my command deck or whatever you're going to call it,
Sure.
so that I know what to use, because I have to look at what the intrinsic things that the special units have, and then what am I needing to help, like, so that all my sixes do extra damage, things like that.
Absolutely. I
That's a
think that
set.
sounds like a great part two to questions for noobs that we can do next episode.
Yeah, I mean that'll be a little slimmer because that'll be army specific.
Oh, I
Um,
don't think that's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a long show, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot there. You asked what seemingly were simple questions that probably have longer answers than you might think.
True, very true. And then the third part for me to learn the game is the game. The
Sure.
playing it on the field. No understanding. This phase then goes into this phase, and so on and so forth. For you
Absolutely. I
know,
think we might have to do some show and tell on that one. We might actually have to pull up some images and actually like put down objectives onto a board and show you some physical examples of this unit's holding that objective.
I was talking about playing a game and then doing a play-by-play like a play-by-play pictures so that we can make like a slideshow sort of to show you like each individual stage happening and what that would look like on the field.
Sounds
right.
like a great next episode.
Plus it gives me a reason to get a game in this week.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Well, I think I'm good for the week. My head is about overloaded, and
All
probably take me 2 weeks to recover, and then we'll go on to the next.
right, sounds good. You want to head us on out there?
I mean,
Young
already.
Kramer? I didn't get to say my line today.
Because I started today. Well, thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed as always. We're gonna be here again. We're going back to, is it lore next week?
I don't know. I think Sean's got more questions. We might go
We
one.
might just go another
We
one.
might go another
Yep.
one to kind of do game questions, and then we finally get to go back to a little bit of lore, and we can talk about the apostasy, the age of apostasy. We're going to talk about where the secrets of battle came from.
Not defeat.
The second civil war of the Imperium. Oh, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. So story time with Ed is coming back.
Yeah, after one more of me managing to cobble an episode together for us.
It'll be good.
All right, well,
Do you want to say bye to everybody?
yeah. My name's Gabe. It's been a pleasure, everybody. Everybody else will say goodbye.
Sean, always good talking to you, my friend.
Yep, great to be here. Glad we got this one in finally.
Finally.
Yeah, we've had some difficulties, but we're young, but we'll get back on schedule.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we will see you guys in the next one.
On duty, honorably discharged.